as far as between those states that we've talked about already, solid, liquid, and gas, but just as far as talking about, matter, we can further, break it down. And when we look at matter subdivisions, there are two to start off with. We have this idea of something being pure, or we have this notion of, a mixture. So, for something that is pure, basically we're talking about, a molecule or an element that, basically is not contaminated or does not contain other different molecules and or elements. So that's the pure state, right? We could talk about that in a couple different examples, right? As far as here we have iron in the solid state. And we see that solid state from the little s. Right, so this would be a pure element. There's other examples as well. A lot of the metals tend to be monoatomic. These are things that we'll get into as our conversation continues. The element oxygen actually exists as a diatomic. And it's actually in the gaseous state. So we see that little G for that. And again, this would be then a pure element. We'll come to learn there are, different styles of these elements as far as monoatomic or diatomic types of elements. That's coming in the future. We could also look at a molecule or a compound. And so here is, something I'm sure we're all familiar with, right? This is water. And it's actually in the liquid state. So we have the little L, the little cursive L. And this would be a pure molecule. So if we're just talking about, one entity, whether that be elemental or molecular or a molecule, if it's pure, there won't be anything else that's actually in there. That takes us to then the second part of that subdivision, which would be looking at now mixture. And basically a mixture is a combination of more than one type of molecule or element. So basically we have, more than one. within this, there are two different distinctions within mixtures, just like we could have, elements being pure or molecules being pure. We have two different types of mixtures that could occur. And so one type of mixture is homogeneous. And this is basically a mixture that cannot be determined. It is a mixture by visualization, or heterogeneous, which is a mixture that can be determined. By that visualization. So you have two different terms, homogeneous. Basically, the idea is it cannot be determined. It's a mixture, and that's just by plain eyesight. With heterogeneous, this can be determined as far as being a mixture. And so as far as an example of these two, if we put sodium chloride or salts in water, right, the salt dissolves, and you can't tell it's a mixture. Specifically by eyesight. Obviously, you could taste it and taste it's salty. Not that you should be tasting your chemicals, but that's the idea. You can't see it visually. And so that's our homogeneous solution. Secondary example would be looking at maybe oil in water. I know that we're not maybe up to speed with oils and hydrocarbons and forces of attraction or anything like that, but with oil and water, the oil clearly floats. On top of the water. This can be seen by eyesight. So that is our heterogeneous type of mixture. So those are our two terms for our mixtures. We have homogeneous and heterogeneous. And one we can't tell it's a mixture by eyesight, homogeneous. One we can tell it's a mixture by eyesight, and that is heterogeneous. So basically, our homogeneous mixture will look something like this. We had now maybe a beaker. Right, and so we can't tell it's a mixture. And then we have the heterogeneous. And so we have roughly our same beaker. We could say that, well, there's a phase difference in terms visually. We can see there's one layer and another layer that's actually there. And so we can tell it's a mixture. So this above would be our salt water example, and below would be our oil water example. So those are the different subdivisions, or different subdivisions, for matter. We have, things that are pure, namely molecules that can be pure, like water, oxygen gas, pure. We can, in terms of the elemental state, we can have, iron as well, solid state, right? Those are the examples that we did earlier. We also talked about then mixtures, mixtures being homogeneous or heterogeneous in terms of whether we can visually see whether there's a mixture or not.